I'm 32 now, but this happened when I was 27. At the time, I was working as a junior graphic designer for a small marketing agency in Massachusetts. I lived alone in a small apartment just outside the city, in a quieter neighborhood where people mostly kept to themselves. I've always been a pretty normal guy, introverted, but not antisocial. I liked my routines. I liked knowing what the next hour of my day would look like. That's what running gave me, structure. Every night after work, around 7:30 p.m., I'd go for a 3 to 5 mile run. The route I usually took went through a residential area, then looped around a small wooded trail behind an elementary school. It wasn't isolated enough to feel dangerous, but secluded enough that I could run without dodging cars or strollers. I had done that route dozens, maybe hundreds of times. I knew every turn, every cracked sidewalk, every dim streetlight that flickered. The night this happened, I remember feeling unusually drained. Work had been stressful, my head was pounding, and I honestly didn't want to run. But I'd been trying to stay consistent, so I forced myself to lace up, stretch half-heartedly, and head out into the cold, early fall air. The sky was already darkening, sunset came earlier than I liked, and the streetlights hummed faintly as I jogged past. Nothing about the beginning of that run felt strange or threatening. It was just another ordinary night, another ordinary routine. And maybe that's why what happened caught me so completely off guard. The first mile of my run was always the warm-up. Past the laundromat, down the small hill, across the quiet crosswalk where cars rarely passed at that hour. My breathing settled into a familiar rhythm, and the tension in my head slowly eased. I remember thinking I'd be fine, maybe even go for the longer loop. A couple of people were out walking dogs. A teenager biked past me with a speaker blasting some muffled rap song. A woman carried groceries to her porch and nodded as I jogged by. All normal, all routine. The kind of everyday interactions that you barely register until hours later when you're trying to piece together a night that went very wrong. By the time I reached the edge of the wooded trail behind the school, twilight had faded into darkness. I wasn't too worried. The trail was only about a mile long, and small motion-activated lights lined the first half. Once you passed those, there was a section that got darker, but your eyes adjusted quickly. I usually liked that part. It felt quiet, almost meditative. I slowed my pace a bit as I entered the trail, listening to the crunch of leaves under my shoes. The air smelled like damp soil and pine. I pulled my sleeves down over my hands and focused on my pace. I remember thinking that I might reward myself with takeout when I got home, maybe Thai food. The trail was empty, which wasn't unusual for that time of night. Most people ran earlier before dinner. I preferred the calm of the late evening, when it felt like the world was dimming with me. It was peaceful, until it wasn't. I'd been on the trail for maybe a quarter mile when I first noticed something. It wasn't dramatic, not a scream or a figure darting across my path. It was more like the feeling of being slightly observed, as if someone behind me had slowed their steps to match mine. I glanced over my shoulder quickly, just a reflex. No one. The path was empty in both directions. I tried to shake it off and kept jogging, but a minute later I heard it again. Soft, deliberate footsteps, not the quick tapping of a jogger, not the scampering of a dog. These footsteps sounded cautious, as if whoever was making them didn't want to be heard. I stopped running and pulled out one of my earbuds. Nothing. Silence, just the rustle of branches in the wind. I laughed nervously at myself, feeling stupid. My mind was probably just playing tricks on me because I was tired. The stress from work had been getting to me more than I liked to admit. I put the earbud back in and kept running, but my pace was slower now. My senses were sharper. The quiet didn't feel peaceful anymore. It felt hollow, like the space around me was waiting for something. Then I noticed a faint glow through the trees to my left, a phone screen. Someone was standing just off the trail, partially obscured by the branches, holding their phone at chest level like they were recording or reading something. I couldn't see their face, just the light. They didn't move. I kept running, telling myself people stop to check their phones all the time, even in dark woods. But something felt wrong, very wrong. About 30 seconds later, I heard the footsteps again, closer this time. Not directly behind me, but off to the left, parallel to the trail. Whoever it was, they were following me from inside the trees. I slowed to a fast walk and kept glancing sideways, trying to see through the branches. The trail lights were fading behind me, and only small gaps of moonlight filtered through the leaves. But I could hear the person, leaves crunching, twigs snapping, matching my pace. "Hey!" I called out, trying to make my voice sound confident. "If someone's there, can you just step onto the trail or something? You're kind of freaking me out." Silence. Then the footsteps stopped completely. I stood still for a long moment, listening, my breath visible in the cold air. I thought about turning back, but going forward meant getting out of the dark trail faster. So I kept moving, quicker now, almost a jog again. That's when I heard it. A whistle. Short. 2 notes. Almost like someone signaling a dog, but too deliberate, too human. I spun around, heart pounding, and saw something move behind a tree about 20 feet away. A shoulder, the edge of a hood. Someone tall, standing stiffly, half hidden. "Do you need something?" I shouted. No answer, just the faint impression of a figure slowly shifting its weight behind the tree, as if trying to stay unseen. I didn't wait. I ran. Full sprint. My chest tightened as adrenaline surged. The air felt freezing in my throat. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just kept running toward the end of the trail, praying the lights of the street would appear any second. But the footsteps returned. Closer. Much closer. I burst out of the darkest part of the trail and finally saw the streetlights ahead. Relief washed over me until a branch snapped loudly behind me. I whipped around and saw him. A man stepped out of the trees, maybe 30 feet away. Tall, lean, wearing a dark hoodie pulled low over his face. His hands were in his pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. But it was the way he stood that terrified me, tilted forward as if ready to move fast. "Why are you following me?" I yelled, my voice cracking. He didn't speak. He took one slow step forward. I backed away, my legs trembling. "Look, man, if you need help or something, just say something, please." Another step, then another. His pace wasn't rushed, but I could feel the intent behind it. He wasn't curious. He wasn't lost. He was approaching me the way someone approaches prey. I turned and ran toward the street, but he broke into a sprint. I heard the rapid pounding of his shoes behind me, violent, fast, getting closer. I screamed for help, but my voice felt swallowed by the empty night. "Stop!" he shouted suddenly, his first word of the night, sharp and furious. I didn't listen. I reached the sidewalk and stumbled onto the residential street. A car passed in the distance, too far to hear me. I darted toward the first house with a porch light on. Behind me, he stopped at the edge of the trail, breathing hard, staring at me. I could see his face now, pale, eyes wide and empty, like he wasn't fully present. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no sound came. Then he took one small step toward me again. I bolted up the driveway and banged on the door. "Help! Please!" Lights inside flicked on. The man vanished back into the trees. The elderly couple who lived in the house let me inside while I struggled to breathe. The husband called the police while his wife handed me a glass of water and kept glancing nervously out the window. An officer showed up about 15 minutes later, took my statement and walked the trail with a flashlight. He didn't find anyone. No footprints, no dropped items, nothing. Just empty woods. He told me it was probably some guy messing around, and that if he didn't touch me or threaten me directly, there wasn't much they could do. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside my apartment made my skin crawl. For weeks, I avoided the trail completely. I stopped running altogether. My routine, the thing that used to keep me grounded, was gone. But the worst part wasn't the fear. It was the feeling that he hadn't been messing around. He'd been waiting for something. Or someone. It's been almost 5 years, and I still think about that night every time I drive past the school. I never saw the man again, but sometimes when I'm walking home from work, I get the same tightness in my chest, the same awareness of a presence behind me. Last month, I found something taped to my apartment door, a folded piece of paper. Inside, just 2 handwritten words. "Nice pace." No signature, no explanation, just those same 2 words.